Hello and welcome. It's time for French Politics here on France 24. I'm Mark Perlman. Coming up on this week's show, the government pushes a new bill to fight against sexual violence. However, some say it doesn't go far enough. And after last week's knife attack in central Paris, the debate over the monitoring of terrorism suspects is once again boiling over. Finally, a year after his election, we'll try to figure out whether Emmanuel Macron is indeed a president, neither from the left or from the right. In the wake of the Me Too movement, the French government vowed to be at the forefront of the battle against sexual harassment. This week, the National Assembly has begun to examine a bill to toughen sanctions against sexual aggression and rape. However, for some feminist groups, the government has actually not fulfilled its promise.
Up till now, it was illegal under French law for an adult to have sexual contact with a minor under the age of 15, but not automatically considered rape. Rape convictions must contain proof of violence, coercion, surprise, or lack of choice. Several high-profile cases of adults having sex with children were acquitted because courts could not find evidence of coercion. Macron's government was keen on establishing an age of consent to tackle the issue, but changed tack over fears it would be unconstitutional by being a violation of the adult's presumption of innocence. Instead, French Gender Equality Minister Marlène Schiappa put forward this new amended law.
The idea is to enable easier sentencing of sexual violence against children. We have seen in the past that occasionally judges do not possess a strong enough legal text within the penal code to convict in cases where its characteristics do not constitute the definition of rape.
The new law assures any adult having sexual relations with a minor will be pursued. But for it to count as rape, the burden of proof is on the minor to prove that their consent had not been given. The bill also creates a new offence, the sexual abuse of minors, for when there is not enough evidence of rape, but enough to show sexual penetration has occurred. The government hopes this will lead to more convictions in child sex cases, though critics say this is ludicrous.
If there were a presumption of a lack of consent, prosecutors wouldn't need to prove it, and proving it is often a very painful, difficult thing to do.
They are calling for the reverse, for the potential aggressor to prove the victim consented. They fear the new offence classification will also only lead to rape being viewed as a petty crime. Those opposed argue the government should just take the risk of breaching the constitution in the first place, or even changing it to bring France in line with most other EU countries.
Well, the bill has been approved, at least by the National Assembly. It now goes to the Senate. We'll see if this controversial measure stays in the bill or not. And after a man who had been on the radar screen of the French authorities went on a stabbing frenzy last weekend in Paris, the controversy over how to handle terrorism suspects has once again been reignited. The right and the far right have immediately called for more drastic measures to deal with the listing of those suspects, known here in France as the escorts. Let's take a listen to their arguments.
Most of the terrorists that took action were on the watch list, so the fact that they were kept on file did not prevent them from taking action. So that proves that it is absolutely useless.
Our institutions have been powerless, inadequate to prevent this individual from acting. Yesterday's methods have failed. It is time now to change them.
Well, the Conservative Party would like actually to see one measure is to detain those on the S-card list. However, the Interior Minister says it's mission impossible.
There are 26,000 on the Fiche S watch list. So to those who think we can put 26,000 people in jail, have to understand that it is a little difficult to carry out. Not all Fiche S are radicalized. Today we're not talking about those at the top of the spectrum, which means those who are monitored closely. Those that are taking action now are often at the bottom of that spectrum. Look at this one, for example. He attacked with his mother's kitchen knife.
Well, it's been 1 year since the surprise election of Emmanuel Macron as France's president. Our reporters went to one of his strongholds, the region of Lyon in France. His interior minister, Gérard Collomb, was mayor of that city for many years, and we'll have a closer look and try to explain why Macron has been so strong in that region. Karina Chabour reports.
Always en marche, the city's representative in parliament, Bruno Bonnell, is following up on the controversial immigration law recently unveiled by Macron's government. This immigration center, situated northeast from Lyon, receives about 80 migrants per month. They are uneasy with the new legislation that imposes tougher immigration laws. Members of the center organized a meeting between the region's elected officials and asylum seekers. They have prepared counter-proposals, hoping to influence the local parliamentary debate on immigration.
I can't believe it. I can say I haven't seen that before.
The entrepreneur and politician who made a fortune in the IT sector put his business on standby to engage in politics.
I'm not a candidate for the mayor of Villeurbanne, just as I was not a candidate for parliament, so we'll see in 2020 what will happen.
To prepare the groundwork, Bonnell gathers with his supporters. He was scouted by Macron's party to beat the city's former socialist minister, Najat Vallaud-Belkacem. However, the arrival of Gérard Collomb to the city leaves the politician with little time to spare. Just like him, all of Lyon came to welcome the leading figure of the city. France's current Minister of the Interior ran this city for 16 years. He is back on his former terrain to inaugurate his latest project, the Grand Hôtel Dieu, a former hospital of historic significance turned into a 5-star luxury hotel and shopping center.
We tried to build the future by drawing from the roots of the past.
Gérard Collomb was the first heavyweight supporter of then-candidate Emmanuel Macron.
It's a place where Macron came for the first time and I supported him. It's been exactly 2 years, so I was a bit ahead of the others with my support. I think the result is not too bad.
Together with his troops and protégés, Gérard Collomb has made Lyon the main stronghold of the Macron movement in France, having elected Emmanuel Macron with 84% of the vote against Marine Le Pen.
Emmanuel Macron campaigned as a new type of politician, someone who was not from the right, not from the left, or both from the right and from the left. 1 year later, is he still above and beyond partisan politics? We take a look back.
Since bursting onto the political stage, French President Emmanuel Macron has set the tone.
Nous devons rassembler des femmes et des hommes de tous bords, de gauche et pleinement de gauche, de droite et pleinement de droite.
The then finance minister and soon-to-be candidate promised to put an end to political divisions. In government, Emmanuel Macron kept his word. Figures from France's 2 main parties joined him. A year ago, 20% of French people considered Macron's party, Republic on the Move, to be right-wing. Today, 50% think that this is the case.
Emmanuel Macron wanted to bridge the gap between left and right. But it's clear for the moment that the government is leaning more to the right than to the left. The reforms which the French people have seen so far are more centre-right policies than centre-left.
Among large-scale reforms of Prime Minister Edouard Philippe's government, suppressing the solidarity tax on wealth, reforming labour law and increasing social contributions. All liberal reforms and nothing that wasn't expected, says this economist.
When you look at it as a whole, Emmanuel Macron's project entails saving 60 billion euros on public spending, 15 billion on unemployment insurance and 10 billion on health insurance. Even Nicolas Sarkozy didn't dare to go that far, and so Macron's economic vision clearly comes from the liberal right.
The think tank Institut Montaigne has carried a study on Emmanuel Macron's first year as head of state. The institute says the president is implementing his program of reforms as he pledged.
It was completely coherent for him to commit to these reforms very quickly. Because he knows that there are very difficult reforms to implement. Yes, I think that it was a priority to do so, because issues surrounding unemployment and work are crucial in France.
Macron is reforming France, but at what cost? 52% of French people think it's a bad thing that he was elected. For the president's party, efficiency does not necessarily go along with popularity. One researcher, however, warns against forgetting about the left-wing voters who cast their ballots for Macron.
For Emmanuel Macron to keep his promise of being both left-wing and right-wing, he would need to send a strong signal that he's committed to reducing social inequalities. We would need to have more working-class French people say, yes, my situation has improved.
Whether it's widespread opposition to the reform of France's rail service or the tightening of the selection process in universities, social unrest has disturbed the beginning of Macron's presidency.
Ultimately, what we said before the campaign was that Emmanuel Macron was liberal on the economy and very left-wing on social issues. At this point, we've realized that he is clearly more to the right, including on social reforms.
Since he passed his tough new immigration law through the National Assembly, a number of his MPs from the left have spoken up, denouncing it as unjust. It's his next batch of social reforms that will perhaps reveal if Emmanuel Macron can exist both on the right and on the left.
And that's all we have time for this week. We'll leave you with some images of the European Union summit in Bulgaria, and we'll see you next week.